This is my best kind of show notes because we didn't touch one of them, not even one of them. I'm not sure which one is Paul Rudd and which one is Lane Green.
Final card here is the ultimate outcome.
Today is Take Your Dog to Work Day.
Oh, like Scooby-Doo.
Yeah. Without further ado, his debut.
Sweet Caroline.
Everybody say hello to Sammy. Is it not good?
I'm just pausing so that you just are at the front of your screen.
I'm so enormously flattered.
Branding is not a bad blind date.
I'm gonna have to take a picture of this.
No, this is agape. This is love.
I really enjoyed this. You did do your homework. You asked great questions.
I'm flattered. Thank you. You just made my day.
Look at you! You are insane.
How did I do that?
You're
how
insane.
Did I do that?
You're insane.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Machu Picchu. I finally made it here. This is, I've had probably 2 bucket list items in the last 12 to 18 months. One of them was to start my own daily streaming video show. I'll let you know how that goes. And the other is to get to Machu Picchu. And sadly, or maybe fortunately, because my guest today will talk to you about the power of virtual tours and virtual mindfulness. I am as close to Machu Picchu as maybe I'm going to get for the next few months, but never say never. Hope springs eternal. My guest is Daniel Gutierrez. He is the master of mindfulness. He's the author of Radical Mindfulness, and I cannot wait to talk to him. Funny story. There are 2 funny stories, actually. The first funny story is I said to Daniel in the green room, I said to him, I'm just want to ask you just a question, which is, because you can imagine, right? I mean, Daniel is, let me show you. Daniel is now guest number 221. 221 since March 16th of 2020. How many people in the world can say that they've interviewed 221 different people in the space of 1 year? And so when people are coming at you thick and fast, sometimes it's hard to remember where they came from. So I said to Daniel, I just want to, ask you, I hope don't take this the wrong way, but how did you come to the show? And he said, well, I was actually about to ask you the same thing. I'm not really sure how I came to the show. So he doesn't know how we got here. I don't know how we got here, but I'm certainly glad he is here. And it just shows you some things, you just don't question the universe. You don't question energy. It just happens because it was meant to happen. That, and the fact that the time change, I guess in Peru, that's where he is, they didn't change their clocks, but we did. And so he was just casually relaxing. He knew that he had an hour to go. And about 5 minutes ago, I said to him, Daniel, where are you? Log on. And he was like, but I got an hour and 5 minutes. I said, no, you don't. No, you don't. Please log on. Anyway, somehow he made it here. I guess traffic in Peru in a cab during these times are just in our favor. So the gods are smiling, the spirits are warm, and I cannot wait for him to come on the show. Let's do a little sneak preview of next week's guests. Tom Peters, the legendary Tom Peters, In Search of Excellence, will be on the show on Monday, Jenny Dietrich on Tuesday, Jay Salmon on Wednesday, and Sean Kanungo on Thursday. Sean was billed recently as the best virtual presenter in the world. I'm not sure who billed him, but I am intrigued, and he seems like a really nice guy. We've been playing on Clubhouse together, so he will be here on Thursday. Tomorrow, I have Diane Hessen, I have Brittany Hodak, I have Ann Jones, and I have Lisa Bedell. I haven't worked out a theme yet. I'm not sure if there's a common theme or thread, but if you see a theme, please let me know, and I can make sure that when I bill the show, I include the theme. We've had humanity, we've had community. I cannot wait for tomorrow. But today is National Forgive Mom and Dad Day. So I'm not sure if my mom is watching today, because she normally watches. If she isn't watching today, I guess I'll just say to her, I forgive her. My mom and I have a poem, well, a poem that she once cited, and I will not use the cuss word, but this is how it goes. And I will replace the cuss word with the word F. They F you up, your mom and dad. They may not mean to, but they do. They fill you with the faults they had and add some extra just for you. And my mom and I have always laughed around that. It has been our bridge. It has been our connection. It has been our way of forgiving each other. Not that she needs to ever be forgiven for anything, but still, it is National Forgive Mom and Dad Day. And if you haven't, forgive them. It's about time. Forgive them. I also forgive anyone that forgot the birthdays of my Facebook friends, Mr. John Keck, Jessica Abbott, Oliver Goldberg, and on LinkedIn, there's Clay Worley, Lars Sorensen, Vishal Tawari, Gert Boerta in my best Afrikaans or South African, Jonas Anderson. Hope you guys are having an amazing day. Well, let's get straight into it, shall we? Let's get into the soliloquy that I have decided to call. Chris Brogan, by the way, says he loves that poem. You might love the version, by the way, Chris, with the F word replaced with a bigger word. I'll give you a clue. There are 4 letters in it, and I'll let you work it out. But yeah, it's a great poem. It is a great poem. But today's soliloquy is called Self-Aware. And let's start off with a quote that comes from my guest today. Radical mindfulness is not only being aware and present, but being so present that you are monitoring your thoughts on a moment-by-moment basis and redirecting your actions towards your current intentions, followed by commitment. Wow! That's what awaits you at the summit of your spiritual Machu Picchu with Daniel Gutierrez as your guide. Self-awareness is nothing new. And yet, I feel like the past 12 months have really brought this to the forefront. Come to think of it, if the 2020 word of the year was pivot, at least amongst marketers, then I'd like to propose 2021's word of the year is self. Self-love, self-care, self-compassion, self-awareness, self-mindfulness. The ability to be present, and so present that one is able to be super deliberate and considerate. It's not just a skill, it's a gift. Can it be trained? Surely. Does it take time? Well, doesn't anything that is worth its while? I know I've been on my own journey of discovery during the past year and change. Meaningful mindfulness has become one of my traveling companions, well, at least from the virtual studio to the bedroom and back. But I'm not sure I quite understand them. And they walk a little too fast for my liking. I'm trying to keep up. I'd basically put people into 3 groups. And I'm going to use the popular 99-1 model, often associated with Jacob Nielsen and friends. 1% of people, if that, are able to practice real-time self-awareness or radical mindfulness. 9% with some kind of time delay or after-the-fact realization. 90% are just clueless, completely oblivious to what they said, did, or acted. Is that too harsh? Well, I'll ask Daniel what he thinks. And I would be remiss if I didn't apply this concept to brands as well. It appears that the real culprits these days are not so much individuals, but rather corporations that, as I like to put it, take their left foot out their mouths in order to replace it with the right foot. The amount of tone deafness that we see from the so-called leaders of organizations or even entire governments indicates an urgent need for a crash course in mindfulness, and that is for sure. Whichever way you look at it, self-awareness can be your superpower or kryptonite, based on your ability to harness or overlook it to the detriment of all those around you, but mainly yourself. And I'm very intrigued as to what Daniel thinks about those three categories, but more importantly, maybe even the 99-1 split between them. Let me ask you something. Do you know your purpose in life? Do you feel complete, effective, and able to meet your goals and achieve your dreams? If the answer is no, you're not alone. Finding success in life starts with finding the right mindset and knowing where you want to go with your ambition. And when it comes to answering these questions, there is no better guide than Daniel Gutierrez. A world-renowned motivational speaker and life coach, Daniel has advised and consulted with countless business owners and professionals. He has spoken on numerous radio shows and documentaries. Daniel was recently featured in the documentary Luminous Worldviews as one of the 18 world-renowned transformational thought leaders, and he is a best-selling author on mindfulness and finding success. Let's welcome him on to the show. Fresh off the taxi. You know what I was going to say? Fresh off the taxi or the boat, and suddenly he disappeared. This has been my day, right? This has been my week. He disappeared. He did say to me, by the way, that in Peru right now, the internet connectivity is a little crazy. But I swear to you, I saw him 1 second ago as I started to give you his bio. So let's riff a little bit. What did you guys think? Adam John says, that's an incredibly rich, deep thought quote. I assume you're referring to Daniel's quote. And let's go back to what Chris was saying with respect to that poem. Well, what do you want to talk about while we wait for, hopefully, Daniel to come back? I must say that has never happened to me yet in my journey and in 221 odd interviews. Let's see if he sent me a little text. He said, well, what happened? I never have problems here. I have no idea. We'll just have to wait for Daniel to see if he can log on. We're live, so, you know, I'm going to do a couple of things. This is going to be the art of improv, my friends. So the first thing I'm going to do in order to buy myself a little bit of time is I'm going to take the actual StreamYard link, and I'm going to say to you, if you want to come on the show right now and riff a little bit with me, maybe respond, I just put that into the comment thread. And now I'm going to put a little banner. Oh, you know what? Here he is. Daniel, what happened?
Let me tell you something. If this is not the perfect example of stay cool, stay radically mindful, all will be well. I'm going to start with your phone call going, you got 5 minutes. Where are you? Well, it wasn't that the Cusco traffic is bad. There's a strike. There's no way to get around. I was like, okay, let's see how we do this. And then just magically everything opened up and here we are. And then of course we get here and I love the question. Who
what
are
happened?
you? How do we connect? I don't know. I've never had a problem here before. It just like disappeared.
Well, listen,
So
you're back, and how could I live streaming on air? How could I even let it affect me when ultimately we're talking about self-awareness? You know, one of the things that's been a common thread here is learning to, control the controllables, right? You control the controllables. You cannot do anything about the things you cannot control. Forgive yourself. There's so many common themes and common threads that, you know, I was just, it is what it is. In fact, what I was going to do, I was just sharing the actual link to say, hey, if anybody wants to come on and riff on the poem or riff on my soliloquy, they could. But anyway, I'm glad you're here. Welcome.
Thank you so much. And you're right about self-forgiveness, right? I mean, I love what you said. Your parents screw us up and then they add a little bit. So
just
true.
For you.
It's so true. And yet at the same time, part of this whole idea, this whole COVID thing has been a test in our ability to stay present because we have no control. things are just doing what they're doing. And I was a busy executive. I mean, I know what it's like to fly from Los Angeles to New York, Chicago to Dallas, in a day, and not even have time to breathe. Now I live in the Andes at 13,000 feet, with mountains around me, and it's bliss. And of course, you got my most favorite mountain behind you, and that's Machu Picchu.
Now, I want to talk to you about this idea of being present, because when I looked, normally what I do in the show is I come up with quotes. And in looking up quotes on mindfulness, this is actually the quote that I ended up selecting for you today. Mindfulness isn't difficult. We just need to remember to do it. But most of the quotes that I found, and by the way, this comes from Sharon Salzberg, most of the quotes talk about exactly what you said. It is about being present. It's about self-awareness, or at least as you would call it, and we'll get to it, radical mindfulness. It's all about being able to be in the moment, live in the moment, and make the most of the moment.
No, absolutely. I think that most people, and I loved your numbers, by the way. I didn't think they were harsh. It's true.
Wow.
That most people don't have a clue, right? They don't even know that they're not aware. It's like taking a fish out of water. It doesn't know it's in water till you take it out, And so the idea behind this mindfulness thing is, well, I can mindfully walk, I can mindfully eat, I can mindfully talk. But most of the time, most people think that if they take a yoga class or a meditation class, that's all they need to do for 30 minutes. Well, the truth is that we need to be more mindful more of the time in order to have the kind of success and peace and tranquility that I think that we're looking for in our life. And COVID has definitely forced us into that space.
And also being able to, I mean, sometimes I go through this experience where I do my best, and there probably are better techniques that I can apply. I try and, when something is happening to me and I'm absolutely present, I try and hold on to every moment of it, the sight, the sound, the smell, the taste, every element, every sensory element, to say, don't forget this. It's not always good moments. It can be bad moments as well. Never wanting to forget that, how vivid it was, how it made me feel. But of course, even with that ability comes forgetfulness. And the next thing you know, the next day, the next week, the next month, you've moved on, and those memories become faded and vague and fuzzy. And I think, as you were talking about, the last 12 months have forced us to be so super present. But are we in danger of, when things return, forgetting? And our human nature almost betrays us as we get back to our old bad habits and bad ways.
Well, some of us are still stuck in them. I made a comment on a show about a friend who invited me to be on his show, and it was very difficult to get our schedules to come together. And I said to him, I said, if your schedule is still as busy as it was before COVID, you've learned nothing. You've learned absolutely nothing. It is natural for us, I think, to get back into what the rat race, so to speak, to get back into that space where we're busy, because we think that our happiness is in the busyness. It's not. It's like music. The powerful music is not in the notes. It's in the gap between the notes. When one note stops and the other picks up, it's like that crescendo stops with a silence. And that's where our happiness is. That's where our tranquility is. And yes, of course, we have this, we think we're going to go back to this normal that existed before COVID. I think that that normalcy won't come back the way that it was. Therein gives us the choice to be more mindful more of the time, so that we do find that peace and tranquility. Because if there's anything that I've heard more than anything, is that people are questioning a lot of things. Why am I working so hard? What is life all about? Why not go to Machu Picchu? Why not go to Bhutan? Why not go to wherever? What happens if tomorrow I find out that I'm not going to live anymore? Then what? It's too late.
You're not going to remember that final brainstorm or that status meeting. I mean, it sounds insane, but I think you said it beautifully, and I think you said it best, which is, this is a very tangible, measurable benchmark, which is, you look at how you used your time before, and if you've gone back, and that is one way to determine if you've fallen back and slipped back to your bad old ways. I mean, I was talking to a chief marketing officer the other day, and we're talking about your schedules. And this is a tip that I actually heard, which is no more back-to-back meetings, no more back-to-back Zooms. Just you've got to give yourself a buffer. For two reasons. One is to, regain, retain, bridge, be able to calm down or wind up or prepare. But the other one is it's kind of arrogant to assume that a meeting should finish when you say it should finish. And what if the meeting's going really well? And it's like, it works both ways. It's silly to have this artificial, well, it looks like our time is up. Cheers. Thanks for playing.
Well, I saw a study once, I think Harvard did it, of 10 very successful men and women. And they asked one question: what do you regret? And it was not taking time to live, not taking time to live. Because once, who was it that said this? I can't remember the person who said it. You can buy everything. You can buy people to drive your car, clean your house, but you can't buy your health once you're in that bed. You have to lie there. And that's what I try to get across to people, because this was the great aha, the great universal global experiment on presence and mindfulness. Can we do it? Some people just can't, Jaffe. They just can't. And if some of the people, think about just the universal energy of the world. If more people stop to take a breath, listen, however you do it, you said something a minute ago I wanted to get back to. You said something earlier about, I forget, I beat myself up, and then I'm not self-aware. There is no right technique. Get over that. There's not. There's just the technique that works for you. And if that works for you, then that's great. We have so much information out there about gurus and teachers and maestros and shamans. That's all great. But in the end, if it works for you, brother, keep doing it.
I love that. I mean, it's so simple and elegant, but this idea of saying, one size fits all no longer applies. It's about which size fits you. Going back to even that quote, you said successful people said the one regret was not taking the time to live. And if you don't even have to read between the lines to actually interpret what they're saying. What they're saying is success was ultimately measured in terms of the hours we spent away from life, from living, from our family, what it took away. And what did we gain? We gained status, we gained ego, we gained money. And what does that all mean when faced with what we lost along the way, whether it was health, whether it was happiness, whether it was our family? It's not even a comparison.
Not even close. I remember one particular day. I left Los Angeles. I was the president of an organization in New York City, so I went there often. I flew from Los Angeles at 11 p.m. I got to New York City at 6 a.m. I immediately was picked up, and I had a meeting every hour on the hour until 10 p.m., where I found myself in a bar having a glass of wine. Then I decided, well, wait a minute. It's 10 p.m. My flight's at 5 or 6 in the morning back to Los Angeles. Why am I going to spend $600 for a hotel? So I went and slept at JFK. Just me and the Zambonis, the people cleaning. And it was that moment when I realized, what is this? For exactly what you just said, prestige, for fame, for money, for what? I just remember that day so clearly, because I thought the only person that was there was the person, running the Zamboni, cleaning the floor. And I was like, wow, who's happier, me or him? I would say probably him.
Do you think now, I mean, so as I was reading your story, you were advisor to the Department of White House personnel in the Obama administration. Your accomplishments as an executive and as a keynote speaker were unmistakable. But there were two things, I basically, these were my words. I said, you didn't have a midlife crisis. You had a midlife awakening. And your words were, you'd mastered your outer game, but you needed to master your inner game. So I would love for you to talk to this idea of the inner game versus the outer game, how it is defined, and ultimately how you kind of take these steps to awaken.
Well, I remember in my early 20s going to the doctor thinking I had a heart attack. I mean, in my early 20s, because I was moving, grooving, doing the thing. I was told that everything on the outside would satisfy everything on the inside. And then I woke up one day in New York City at a fancy restaurant overlooking Fifth Avenue, sitting next to Al Sharpton and some other high-level executives. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, is this it? This emptiness I feel, is this it? I mean, I did the fame, I did the speaking, I did the TV shows, I did the radio, the four magazine covers. It wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. It wasn't until that moment when I looked in the glass window of this restaurant, and it was snowing that day, that I realized I've absolutely created nothing. I'm not happy. These things that society said would create the happiness that I was looking for did not do that. So I did seek out. I just posted today on social media a picture of me in Bhutan. The Prince of Bhutan invited me to come visit during this time when I started to think, I think it's time for me to just slow down a little bit. I didn't even know what it was. I'll be honest with you. I didn't know how to do it. I just knew that busy was. I helped build the Best Buy company. 10 years after I quit working for them, I was still going in their stores and moving things to make them perfect. So the inner game is that peace of mind, peace and tranquility that cannot be bought. It cannot be bought. It's not materialistic, and it's something that you said something earlier about being mindful enough to remember a taste, a feeling, an experience. That's mindfulness. That's true inner peace. When we can go back and go, because we can remember the bad things. That's an easy one. But what about the wind, hitting your face on a day in the park on Central Avenue, Central Park, or something like that? We don't give those moments enough credit. I remember when I started to go down this path, one of my friends was working for the Small Business Administration at the White House. And I said to him, I think we need to teach people how to be more inside rather than outside. And he blew me off because he didn't want to hear it. He says, well, those soft skills, is what they called them back then, don't mean anything. Oh, it's kind of interesting today that those soft skills is what we're all looking for.
There is, I as you were talking, I was thinking to myself, and we'll talk about these skills, right? We'll talk about these tips and these skills. And I love the fact that to me, it's like, it's great. It's like throwing down the gauntlet, life altering strategies in as little as 60 seconds. There's something that's awesome about that. And we'll get there. Two questions. One is, do you think people are jealous of you now in your, and I use the word jealous because look at you, close to this spiritual, panacea, this incredible place that people have on their bucket list, and you get to like experience it almost, as often as you want to. Do you think right now the life that you've chosen, do you think people are jealous of you?
Well, before I answer it, I'll tell you a funny story. When I first made this decision to travel to, study with the monks in the Amazon jungle and all these places, I had an executive call me. He says, Daniel, what are you doing? Have you lost your mind? What are you doing? You're committing career suicide. You've worked so hard to build your brand here, and now you're destroying it. I remember saying to that person, maybe so, but I have to take this risk. Now, fast forward 5-6 years before the pandemic, I spoke at Carnegie Hall, and my opening act was Earth, Wind, and Fire. And in the audience were some of those people that said to me I had made a mistake. And I said to them that moment, many years ago, not too far from here, I was in a restaurant thinking, what about my life? And I left to find out what life was really all about. I'm here sitting at Carnegie Hall with Earth, Wind, and Fire. I guess I didn't do too bad that I'm still here. So today, to answer your question, there are some that are jealous, and there are some that are asking how. How did you do it? Because everybody thought I was destroying my career. Now they're saying you just built a brand on top of a brand. Because it's true. I was literally coming back from booking a train trip to Machu Picchu. I'm going there Tuesday because I feel like going. And it's there where I find this place that you talked about, where you can feel something that's not tangible, but yet tangible at the same time. And yeah, I'm sure that there's people that would go, wow, he did it. He got out of the rat race. He got out, and I did. I mean, I was just telling someone the other day, I said, am I retired? I mean, I have a beautiful retreat center in Pisac, right at the beginning of the Sacred Valley of the Incas. And sometimes I'm walking around going, wow, this took some time. I go out and feed the chickens and the sheep and the rabbits and I think to myself, wow, who am I? And I'm glad I'm here. And we all have that opportunity. We don't have to move to Peru. We can do it right where we're sitting. And we'll talk about that. Because if you can find that inner peace right where you're sitting, then you have inner peace. You don't have to do what I did. You don't have to go study with the monks in the Himalayas. You don't have to go study with the maestros of the Amazon or the Pacos of the Andes. You could do it right from where you're at. That's why I did it. So I could show you how to do it.
Well, we will talk about that. I want to ask you one more question about
Sure.
the beauty around you, around us right now, which is, do you ever take it for granted? Or maybe the different question would be, how do we teach ourselves and create the checks, the guardrails to avoid ourselves taking what is truly beautiful and special and transcendent in life for granted?
That's where mindfulness comes in. That's where radical mindfulness comes in. Because there are people right now that I know in Los Angeles that never go to the beach. There are people right now in New York City that never go to Central Park. There's beauty everywhere. There's beauty everywhere. As a matter of fact, in every great big city in the United States, they built these big, beautiful water fountains around the buildings. Do you think they put them there just because they were pretty? No, they put them there because humans need that connection to nature. But if we can stop just a moment in time and say, today, instead of taking another meeting, I'm going to go to Central Park. I'm going to go walk on the beach. I'm going to go step into the mountains if you're in Denver. Wherever it may be, we have this beauty. And here, answering the question, do I take it for granted? I took for granted that I lived on the beach in Los Angeles for almost 20 years. And I bet you a handful of times I went. I did take it for granted there. But here, the power of Machu Picchu and the power of the Andes is so palpable. It's so thick that as soon as I start to take it for granted, I see a hummingbird that brings me present in the moment, and I just stop. And I appreciate that hummingbird for coming into my presence and coming into my space, because it's just saying, hey, don't forget us. This is part of you too. This is part of our humanness. We need that to survive. We need to stay connected to Pachamama, to nature.
I see we could almost call it, I have to check myself not to fall back into my consulting habits. But we could call it, if we were, because we both have done that before and we speak and we write, it is the hummingbird effect. It is a reminder. Mm-hmm. It's the fact that there are these reminders all around us all the time, but are we paying attention? Are we alive? Are we awake? Are we able to see the signs as they present themselves versus being blind to that which is completely staring at us, right in the face?
That was pre-COVID. I remember doing an event. I was a speaker at Mercedes-Benz, and there was this beautiful, beautiful yellow tree. It was the only one. It was in the fall on campus right before you come into the building. And I remember asking 400 people, what's the most beautiful thing on your drive into campus? Not one person said that yellow tree, because nobody saw it. Nobody saw it. They were too busy trying to get to their office. And I said, when you leave today, look at the beautiful yellow tree. It's an example of how you're missing out on life by not being present.
I got goosebumps when you told that story. It's amazing, and not one person saw it, and it was there all the time, right?
All the time.
It's the same thing like taking people for granted, people in your life, people that are actually, and the biggest crime and the biggest tragedy is when these people are parents that made a mistake because they were human beings, because they filled you with the faults they had and added some extra just for you, and you weren't able to rise above it and forgive them.
Right. And that is one of the precursors to mindfulness is connecting to essence. It could be nature, to connecting to yourself, then others, not the other way around. That you don't, it's same as forgiveness. You don't forgive others first, you forgive yourself first. And when you realize that, when you get these monkeys off your back, like, well, you know, I still hold my mom in contempt, or I hold my family in contempt, or whatever it may be, you are still chained. This is why we work so hard. We're running. When you quit running and face yourself in the mirror, again, the big COVID experiment was the big mirror that some of us looked at, some of us did not. And that's why I said what I said about your schedule. If your schedule is still as busy as it was before COVID, you've learned absolutely nothing, because you haven't stopped long enough to look in the mirror and say, hey, I may not like that person. What should I change? Or I like that person. Why do I like that person? And that's where we begin to connect to each other, to others, to life. And we get in this place where we finally wake up. I mean, folks, if you're young right now, don't wait until you're in your 50s, 60s, and 70s to go, well, I guess I should forgive them. You know, I'm closer to death, so I better start doing this. You know, so I have happiness. You can have happiness now. And I'm not even saying that you can't be a busy executive and not be happy. I'm saying you could be. I had a meeting. I just remember this. I had a meeting once with the president of HSBC North America. And you know what he asked me? He didn't ask me, Daniel, what about my numbers? He's got an accountant for that. He didn't ask me, what about my people skills? He's got an HR person for that. He asked me, how can I be a better man? How can I be a better person? Because a great leader or a great person always wants to find out, what can they do on the inside to affect those people on the outside?
What did you tell him? Or what do you tell someone who asks that question? Maybe not that personal story, but when somebody says, how do I be a better man, a better husband, a better father, a better human, a better citizen?
You know what I say?
I want to hear.
When's the last time you danced? When's the last time you laughed? When's the last time?
Right now. I want to dance with you.
When's the last time you flew a kite? Because that is the essence of a true person that's enjoying themselves. So here's a little test for you. Think about this. Think about something as a child that you did that gave you so much joy. So, I mean, just joy. Like for me, it was flying a kite. I don't know why, but there's just something about letting all the string out in your kite and just flying that kite. And how many years has it been since you've done that? When I did this exercise many years ago, it was 20 years. And so I went and bought a kite. I went to Walmart and bought a kite. It was like $1.50. It didn't even cost anything. And as I was flying that kite, you know, other adults were looking at me, but I don't think they were thinking, what an idiot. What's he doing? I think they were thinking, I wish I could do that too. Those are the things that I talk to people when I'm talking about, what are you doing for joy? Because if you ask most people, what are your not what's the word I'm looking for? What are the things you enjoy doing? They can't tell you that. It always goes back to work. It always goes back to work. And that's when that's when you really realize that somebody's really stuck in that rat trap. That they don't even know what makes them happy. And that's why we end up losing people, places, and things, because we don't connect to them anymore. So the answer to him was really simple. Who are you? What do you enjoy? What makes you happy? What brings you joy? You do those things, and you'll be a better leader.
Joey Dumont says, "Love this dude," and Adam John says, "Love. I'm blown away by this guest." I have to tell you that I am getting so much joy right now. The last 12 months have given me joy. I've been very, very deliberate not to use the word labor of love. It's a love of labor. It's not a labor of love, and it's just love, 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 and it's joy. I've learned so much about the difference between happiness and joy, but being present and being in the moment, and being with you right now, regardless of time zones, regardless of internet connections. But this is what's important, and this is what counts. I've got some photos to show about some of these retreats, but let's talk about mindfulness. Let's talk about this, this awesome aspiration. And I'll say, how do we get there? How do we get to the 1%? How do we get to the ability to be so present and in the moment that every word, every nuance, body language, the response of the people in the room, or the people we're talking to, that we can immediately course correct or check ourselves, or right or wrong, and be able to almost, to me, it's like slowing down time. How do we pause time enough to be able to course correct, I guess?
The first thing is that we have to learn to find something to bring us into we have to train our brain to say, oh, it's time to slow down. How do we do that? The very easiest way. And I don't know that I'm that smart. I have to have things really, really simple, or I lose it. I can't do it. So I said, okay, so what's the easiest thing I could teach people to do? Just stop right now and just do this. That's it. Because in the first time you do that, you're going to be thinking. Just take a deep breath. Exhale. I mean, my body's tingling as I do that, because it's going, dude, you hold your breath. We all hold our breath. And then we wonder why our brain's foggy, because there's no oxygen. But breathing is the easiest way. There's no fancy way. You don't have to put on a white suit. You don't have to do all the, just breathe. Just take a deep breath. Bring yourself present. I use essential oils. I use Palo Santo, whatever it takes. When you train the brain to get present by doing these things, that's the first thing in becoming mindful. The next thing, once you do that, is you ask yourself this simple question. Where am I right now? Am I in the future? Am I in the past? Or am I present? Now, that's a trick question, because if you're asking that question, you're not present. But here's the truth. Anxiety and stress, most of the time, I'm not saying this is not a medical condition, most of the time is self-inflicted. Why? Because we're worried about what happened in the past. Maybe we're not forgiving somebody, so just go do it. The next thing is we're worried about what might happen in the future. In both those places, we have no power. Zero power. The only power we have is in the present moment. And when you get there, you realize that in this moment, the next question I would ask is, am I okay right now? Right now. Not in the future, where I may think I'm losing my job, or a girlfriend, or a husband, or a wife, or not in the past, but right now, am I okay? Most of the time, the answer to that question is yes, I'm okay. And then I ask myself, and this all happens like immediately. Then I ask myself, are the thoughts I'm having real? Have they ever been real? No. Has it ever been real that I didn't pay my employees? No. Has it ever been real that I never paid my rent or my mortgage? No, we're making up things because we're drama kings and queens. We need to have this adrenaline flowing through our body, but that's not mindfulness. That's addiction to stress and anxiety. But when we leave that space, I'm going to tell you what, I remember being in the ashram, and I said this, you know what you get when you become ultimately present? And they all thought I was going to say something like powerful and deep. And I said, it's boring. It's actually pretty depressing. They were like, what? I said, well, but think about it. When you finally get to a place where everything's okay, there's nothing to do. That's when the work begins, because now you're present. Now you're in this space, and now you're realizing that your whole life has been full of things that didn't matter, or things you could not control. We talked about this at the beginning of the show, letting go of the things that we can't control, which is something COVID has taught us. So that is what I do to get, and it's very simple. Then after that, once I get myself and I realize that I'm thinking things that aren't true, then I act. Am I getting closer to where I want to be or further away? And then I act. do something. Do something to get to make whatever it is your intention is or your desire is, and make it happen. Remember the quote that you quoted me on, and then you followed by commitment that I'm not going to do the same thing I've been doing over and over again. This is why it's called a practice. But there's no perfect. And I find myself, listen, in Los Angeles, if you go and do yoga or you meditate or you do whatever you do in the morning and you get out on the 405 and someone cuts you off and the first thing you do is flip them off, you have no practice. You have no practice. So just keep working at it. And if we can get to, let's say, wow, I don't even know, 40%, 50%, our lives will be better for it. Because most of the time our anger comes from not being present. Most of the time, our anxiety comes from not being present. Most of the time, our depression comes from not being present. I'm here to tell you that I was one of those people, and I'm not perfect because I get there. You don't think I was losing my mind getting that taxi trying to get to this? There was no mindfulness there. I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do, right? But I'm not perfect, and that's one of the biggest things we have to learn. We're human. It's called the human condition. Emotions, they come up, right? It's just part of life.
I mean, so well said. I had so many thoughts there. The first is almost, if I remembered you correctly, you almost said boring is good. You want to get to boring because when there are no distractions, and that's, as you say, that's when the real work begins. The other thing is, I think you said it, and I just want to repeat it because it needs repeating, that the opposite of mindfulness is addiction.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there was that. Yeah. Is that a fair statement? And then,
absolutely.
And then there's one other thing that I thought was interesting, which is, in the executive world. You see, this is so interesting. In the world of business, you can either be focused on the past, the present, or the future. But we're actually trained that future is good because that's innovation, that's risk taking, that's, Drucker said to defend the past is far riskier than creating the future. And in a way, it's bad to be present, to be focused on the numbers, the daily grind. Present has been downgraded. I'm even guilty of telling people to think about the future, and then of course that old saying, right? Yesterday's history, tomorrow's a mystery, today's a gift. That's why they call the present. So I'm wondering, how do we reconcile the power of the present, or the power of being present, in a business environment where invention and reinvention and risk taking, like I'm struggling to figure out how to be present as a business person and yet have one eye on the future.
I have a quote, and I don't remember which one of my books I said it in, but it goes, "Dream of tomorrow, but walk in today. Dream of tomorrow, but walk in today." And if the things that we do, it's kind of going back to that moment when let's say it's the second of the month, and somebody's stressing out because they just paid their mortgage and now their mortgage is due on the next month, but they freak out on the second day of the month. When you get into that space and you're not present, you're unable to do the things that you need to do to get the type of success you're looking for. It's impossible, because before you know it, it is the next month and you didn't make that payment. But it wasn't because it wasn't possible. It was because you weren't focused on the things you need to focus on. I remember being in corporate and thinking, wow, I used to have to look at my numbers every 90 days. But I thought, wow, if a corporation as big as the one I was working for, $1 billion corporation, can only look at their numbers every 90 days because it's too much, then why are we looking 5 years down the road? Heck, I might not live till tomorrow. I might get run over by a bus. Why am I looking so far down the road? Now, I can set a goal, but I'm still required to do the things in this moment to get to that goal. And if you keep doing those incremental things, you'll eventually get where you want to go. But if you're focused too much out on the goal that's 5 years from now, you're going to trip. You're going to trip. It's just natural. You're going to trip. And then you're going to go see it didn't work. It has nothing to do with that. Here's the other thing I want to say. Our most dominant thought is always being brought into existence. Our most dominant thought is always being brought into existence. So if it's fear, it's fear. If it's COVID, it's COVID. If it's money, it's money. I have practiced with this since the first time I heard it. And it's true. If you don't like the way the things are going in your life right now, look at where your thoughts are. And if they're obsessive, again, if they're not present, they're obsessive, then look at where the results are coming from. We are powerful human beings with powerful minds and powerful energy. How did I end up? I'm looking behind you right now at Machu Picchu going, oh, look, in a few days, I'll be standing right there.
Yeah.
I know that mountain so well, right? I've been there like 37 times. But that's because that's what I desire in my life today. That's what I desire. I'm still a business guy. I'm still out here running a business. I'm still doing interviews, but I'm very present to the idea that even though I look out into the future, that the only way to get there is one step at a time. Do you remember the Santa Claus is coming to town when the Winter Warlock, you know, he ends up losing his powers, and he asked Kris Kringle, I don't know how to do that. And he says, put one step in front of the other, and soon you'll be walking out that door. I see you be silly with other guests, so I didn't mind.
I see, you know, in my mind, I see these wonderful contradictions between, you know, the tyranny of incrementalism versus a leap forward or a leap of faith. You know, over the course of 220 plus interviews, I've had conversations about the first step is the hardest. No, the second step is the hardest. I'm almost formulating, it's almost it is a song or a kite flying, and I can see it taking shape. The reality is every step is important, but the most important step is the next step. It is the ability to keep walking, keep moving, and keep, you know, just keep on keeping on, you know. And I love this idea, is because you are dreaming of the future, you are walking towards the future, but you are absolutely present and focused on, quite frankly, not tripping over your untied shoelaces. So it is, to me, about bridging. It's about reconciliation. And I think maybe the mindfulness comes from making the connections between, I call it, it's actually the past, the present, and the future, and recognize the dynamism of almost existing in different ways, shapes, and forms in all three planes at the same time.
Absolutely. You just described the cover of my book, because the cover of my book has me, by the way. That's a photo of me walking because I wear a black hat. As a matter of fact, I got it on today. On both sides of the fence there are what I used to be, corporate, the other side where I want to go, and the path to get there. And you absolutely hit the nail on the head. I got it. The next step is the most important, because if I don't make that choice, it doesn't matter. And if I don't make it in the right state of mind, by a place of presence, not fear, doubt, and disbelief, then I've just absolutely failed myself. So what you just described was how I came to that cover.
That's amazing. That's great. And you know, I've just below you guys in the comments right now is a link to Radical Mindfulness, profound inner peace in as little as 60 seconds. Would you believe? And let me ask you another another tip, which is 60 seconds. I think clearly breathing will fit into 60 seconds. What else fits into 60 seconds that can help people almost regain that perspective?
You bet. Our most powerful sense is smell. We don't use it for meditation, and we don't use it for mindfulness. Find that smell that you like. Train your brain. That I use Palo Santo. It's a sacred wood that grows in Ecuador and in Peru. And I burn this Palo Santo to help me get centered, to help me get, and there's actually oils. Find something that your nose recognizes, and it would literally rewire your brain to say, when I take a whiff of this smell, vanilla, lavender, whatever it may be for you, that it automatically changes the neurons in your brain, creates this frenzy of, okay. That's when you know you're on the right path. We all do it. And I, you know how I learned this? I had a car accident when I was 18 years old. I fell asleep. I was in a Fiat X19 convertible. I hit the back end of a big Cadillac going about 80 miles an hour. The last thing I remembered was the smell of the gas. And for years and years and years and years, didn't matter how many years away from it, if I smelled the gas, it brought me back to that moment. And I realized we need to use this a different way. So that is the most powerful thing I can share with you today, besides taking a deep breath. And I'm trying to share with things that are easy and practical. You don't need to go and sit in the Himalayas for 40 days and 40 nights to find your peace and tranquility. You can find that right now in the busyness of New York. Well, maybe New York City's not so busy after all right now, but in the busyness of your life.
Always Cusco at the moment, so that's good.
Yeah, Cusco. It is Cusco.
It's actually not good. But so Daniel, I've posted a comment, or not in the comments, a link to an Amazon link to your book. But you do these real retreats, but now you're doing these virtual retreats, and the next one is April 9th to 11th. Tell us a little bit about these virtual retreats and how it's possible, I think, to create the same scentless experience, you know, when you are virtual versus, I mean, being here and witnessing all these just incredible moments and memories.
You know what I've done is that during the first 40 days of the lockdown here in Peru, I was literally stuck in my retreat center alone. We were under martial law, which means if I walked outside my property, there were soldiers there asking me where am I going, what I'm doing. It was horrible. And rather than feel sorry for myself, I got to a point. A friend asked me, her name is Ann, she's the one that does this with me. Hey, Daniel, would you consider doing a virtual retreat on Zoom? And I said, well, what does that look like? What's that about? And again, just taking the next step, we said, why not? Let's try it. So now I have, my whole property has Wi-Fi. I have a camera equipment, and I take people through the whole property, show them the property. I have shamans that come in to do despacho ceremonies of Pachamama. I have a flute maker that comes in and talks about Aini, what's reciprocation look like for the Incas and the Quiro and the people of the Sacred Valley. And so the experience is very rich. And I also teach more about radical mindfulness. How do we do that in the midst of all this? And the result has been we've gotten better and better and better. I think it's our 8th one. We've gotten better and better at this. And people actually feel like they've gotten a chance to get away and be part of something without having to leave the comfort of their home. That was the reason why we did this in the first place. Now, with the restrictions lifting and the vaccinations coming, starting June or starting April next month, I actually have guests here again. They're like, I want to come see this place that I saw on this virtual retreat. So I really want to invite people to come out and try it. It's only, let's see here, a couple of hours on Friday night, 3 or 4 hours on Saturday, and 3 or 4 hours on Sunday, because I know that we can't keep people's attention that long. But if you want to hear great music, some meditation, you want to see the beautiful yoga studio that I have with these big, large crystals in it. I mean, it's a beautiful experience. And it was born out of a necessity to find a way for me to connect to people all the way in the Andes all by myself.
Well, this has for me been a beautiful experience. I have no, I'm going to go to Machu Picchu, but now I know who I want. Now I know who I want to go with. I'm not going to do it without you, Daniel.
Good.
This has been just an absolute joy. We didn't even get to or have time to discuss a few things, but if you come to the Zoom after show and you want to hang out, we have a small group of loyal, regular viewers of the show. We can find out about how you once traded a 3-carat men's diamond for an airplane, your tattoo, which you got at 55 years of age, or why your spirit guides are the Condor and Picasso. But there is one more order of business. I feel like almost this question was made for you, Daniel. How will you be remembered?
As the person that wasn't scared to chase his dreams, left it all behind and said, I'm going to go do what I feel I'm called to do. the thing I get asked the most is, how do you know you made the right decision? And I wish this for everybody. When I get up in the morning and I get my cup of coffee and I walk the property with my dogs, my soul smiles. And that's something I've never experienced in my entire life. It's from something from the inside out that makes me feel I'm okay.
How did you know you made the right decision? By agreeing to come on a show where you were like, I'm not really sure who he is or how I got to register. And I'm thinking, I don't know who he is and who referred him to me.
So true.
But some things are just meant to be.
That's right.
I've had a wonderful, wonderful time with you, and I'm looking forward to a few more extra minutes in the after show. But we always end off this show with the Grand Warden, as I call him. He's not a shaman, although maybe he once played one on TV. But he always gives us a sense as to how our guest did, Mr. Chuck Norris.
You are Chuck Norris approved.
There you go. I mean, there was no doubt. See you guys tomorrow with a community show and in the after show right now. Thank you again, Daniel.
Thank you for watching Corona TV with your host, multiple author, and global keynote speaker, Joseph Jaffe. Corona TV is the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing. The after show on Zoom starts right now at bit.ly/Corona TV After Show. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show at coronatv.show. And if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, text Corona TV to 66866 or visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.